who hasn't seen the house.
Yeah, come with us. You'll see how close it is to the city.
But no, it's not close. You said it was in Escrow? I couldn't even find that on the map.
No, Joey. Escrow is... There's money, and... It's not the bank exactly. I don't know what it is.
I love that scene.
You would. You just love Friends, don't you?
I do. That was my suggestion to put it up there.
Yeah. Well, welcome to our show today.
Hi, I'm Kathy.
And I'm Tracy, and we are a husband and wife real estate broker team with John L. Scott in Redmond, Washington.
And this is a live webcast that happens every Friday at noon, and it's about buying your dream home today.
It's focused on making sure that you have the confidence you need to go out and buy that dream home.
Yes. And today's topic is escrow.
Yeah, escrow. And we have a wonderful guest on to help us learn all about escrow. And her name is Michelle Keck. She's with Rainier Title in Puyallup, Washington, I believe, right, Michelle? Hello, Michelle.
Hello, Michelle.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's so nice to have you on the show today.
Is it Puyallup? Is that right?
Well, I actually manage both the Puyallup and the Bellevue Rainier Title office.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
But every time I hear Puyallup, it's do the Puyallup.
Yes. There is a little fair down there.
Just
Yes.
a little one, yes.
Well, Michelle, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. First, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And as you mentioned, I'm Michelle Keck with Rainier Title. I have been in the escrow industry for nearly 17 years. I started as an escrow assistant. I moved into commercial escrow over to the legal side of title and escrow. I've been in sales, marketing, education. I've been an LPO for almost 7 years and a manager at Rainier Title for 4.
Well, very nice.
That's quite the career, I have to say. Yeah, it's really nice to have you on because so many people, and like the Friends episode, whenever people talk about escrow, it's like, where is escrow? What is escrow? So
Right.
Let's talk about what is escrow.
So escrow, really, I think the biggest thing to remember about escrow is that we are a neutral third party. We do not represent anyone in the transaction. However, we have a duty to protect everyone's best interest. And everything that escrow does is provided to us in writing. So typically on a purchase, our initial instructions are going to be the purchase and sale agreement. So everything that escrow needs to accomplish is basically written in that purchase and sale agreement. We are essentially a safe place for the buyer and the buyer's lender to deposit the closing funds, and at the same time, a safe place for the seller to deposit the fully executed deed that will transfer the property. So basically, we wouldn't have a buyer who's willing to pay for the property before the seller has transferred it to them. But at the same time, a seller isn't going to transfer the property before the buyer has paid for it. And so this evolved escrow, where we are preparing closing documents, the HUD settlement statement, which we can talk quite a bit about, and the deed that will transfer title. All of that stuff sits in escrow until the terms of the purchase and sale agreement have been met. And then once we're authorized to close, we then will record the deed and utilize the funds according to the parties' agreement.
And you mentioned it several times, and that's how I picture it. It's like the safe haven of all your really important. I mean, you're buying a home, and so
big deal.
Yeah, it is. It's got the title, it's got your purchase and sale, and the money that you're putting down, all of it. And this is why we wanted to have you on here. Escrow plays a huge part of buying a home. And so it's all nice and safe, and it's with the escrow. And let's talk about the purchase and sale agreement for a minute. So you that's your guide.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you go through everything that the agents, the brokers, the buyer will put on that piece of paper. And that's kind of like your I want to say it's your Bible, but it's not really
a script.
Yeah, it's your script to go through and go line by line of all the things that you need to do and get the money, the purchase orders or whatever it is, the cashier's check, the cash, and you put it in a nice safe place.
All carefully orchestrated.
Yes, that's exactly correct. The purchase and sale agreement is our instruction for the whole, kind of the driving document for the whole file. It tells us what terms the buyer agrees to purchase the property and what terms the seller agrees to sell the property. And so in that purchase and sale agreement, there's so much in there. It will talk about our closing date, our purchase price, if the lienable utilities are paid through closing, what happens to any assessments, all the way down to what deed we as LPOs are instructed to prepare that will convey the property, as well as what sort of title insurance policy the buyer will get from the seller. There's so many other conditions in there. That's just a handful of the ones that really directly affect escrow, including closing cost credits that may be negotiated and all those other items.
And so once when the buyer and the seller sign this with the broker, then that goes right into the escrow process, right? It starts right away after that.
Absolutely. Once we are provided the purchase and sale agreement, that's when escrow is officially opened. So we go through the process of opening the transaction. We order the title. Sometimes it's just an updated title, but we get the title report. So we're going to see any liens or judgments or restrictions, basically everything that's been recorded on that property.
Let's talk about what a lien judgment, anything on that, since you brought that up. That's wonderful. Let's talk about that.
Important?
Yes.
Okay. So basically what we're going to look for as escrow is we assist the seller in clearing title. The purchase and sale states that the seller will provide the buyer with clear title. So we're going to get essentially payoff statements or invoices for each of the monetary items listed on the title report. So if the seller has a mortgage, it's recorded as a deed of trust. If they have a deed of trust on the property, we will obtain a written payoff statement from the lender that they make those payments to. There's property taxes. We may see a judgment against the seller that will need to contact the judgment creditor and make sure that that is paid off, so that at closing, everything against the seller is released or reconveyed. That's the process of removing an item from title. And so it's just, we go through each of the paragraphs on the purchase and sale and make a determination on, is it a monetary item that needs to be cleared, or is it a restriction or covenant that stays with the property, even if along with the buyer, they purchase. That goes along with the property.
That's a good point. And the judgment, again, I mean, it could be nothing. It could be something that just needed to be cleared, but you help them with that.
Absolutely. And something I want to mention with judgments are, we not only search the property, but we search the names of the seller and the incoming buyers. And the reason for that is there's certain judgments and liens that attach to a property automatically because they've attached to the person. And that's where there's this document called a statement of identity that's often needed, especially if we're working with a buyer and a seller with a common name, because if with the name Michelle Smith, that's a very common name. If that were to be searched in the public records, chances are there will be numerous, we call them numerous items, against Michelle Smith. So I will complete a statement of identity essentially to determine if those items are against this Michelle Smith, our buyer or seller, or against a completely different Michelle Smith. And that's when title supplements will be issued that either confirm or remove those items.
That is a great.
Sounds like you're our best friend.
I know, but also, I mean, I have Kathy Nelson. How there's probably a billion of those. So it is. It's a nice peace of mind for a buyer or a seller to just know that somebody's looking out for you.
Now this sounds like it's a pretty lengthy process. How long does it really take?
You know, I would say that a typical escrow we're seeing is about 30 days. We have quick closes that can close in as little as 2 weeks.
Ooh, that's nice.
And depending on the transaction, we have some that can take 45 days, 90 days, or believe it or not, years. And every transaction is so different. Although the escrow process is essentially a very streamlined process, every transaction is different. But I would say typically 30 days is probably a normal closing.
Okay, so you've piqued my interest there. 2 weeks. What would go? Is it like an all cash offer? Is that?
Typically, we're going to see that in more of an all cash or a what's called hard money lender, which are ones that don't go through the same through the same process as a traditional lender would have to go through with documentation, credit reports, and all those sort of things.
Do you pull up the credit reports and most of the stuff like right at the beginning of the process?
As escrow and title, we never see the credit report.
Oh,
that is
that's a good. Okay.
It's always on the lender end where they're going to go through and look at the credit report, and that's part of the lender approval process. But escrow, we typically don't see appraisals. We typically do not see credit reports. All that's kind of done outside of our involvement.
That's really good stuff to know too, because people are so, they don't want a lot of people looking at their finances. So that's good to know. That mainly the mortgage lender that you're working with will know that stuff.
You're the ultimate traffic cop.
Yes.
You don't need to see inside the car, but you need to see where everything's going.
Very good.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah. Well, closing costs, let's talk about those for a minute. What are we talking about when we're talking about closing costs and when you're buying a home?
Because that comes up a lot.
Absolutely. So we have the typical closing cost in a real estate purchase. We have the commissions, which are typically, and I say typically just because, like I said, every transaction is different. The commissions for the real estate brokers are typically paid by the seller. Loan costs are typically a buyer cost. And then we go into what's called prepaid items, and those are also part of the lender charges. Those can vary greatly. I've had people ask me what's typical lender charges, and like I said, everything is so different. Every lender is different. So that's really a hard question for escrow to be able to answer, but that is part of what will be on the form called the HUD settlement statement. In addition to the loan charges, there's going to be title and escrow charges. Escrow, it's written in the purchase and sale agreement that the escrow fee is split evenly between the buyer and the seller. The owner's title insurance, again, according to the purchase and sale, is paid by the seller. The seller is purchasing a policy to ensure that the buyer is receiving clear title. If the buyer is getting a loan, the buyer will then ensure the lender that they're protected. So the buyer purchases the title insurance for the lender. We then will have recording fees, which is to record the deed that will convey the property from the seller to the buyer. And the deed of trust is typically the other document that gets recorded. There's situations where we may have additional documents, maybe a power of attorney or a quitclaim deed. But that's, like I said, I go back to the every transaction is different. Then we jump into excise tax. Excise tax is typically 1.78% of the sales price, and it's typically a seller cost. And then we're going to see property taxes that get prorated, so the buyer pays during the period of time that they own the property, and the seller pays for the period of time that they own the property. Any homeowners association dues that need to be paid up front by the buyer are included on that HUD-1 settlement statement, or any dues that are due from the seller at the time of closing, as well as the utilities that we mentioned. And there's a lot of other charges that could be added, but that's on a case per case depending on the property.
So things are split up really carefully.
And
really.
It was nicely done, the way you just mentioned what the buyer and the seller are responsible for. That made a big difference for, I'm sure, many people, because that's a big question. What the heck am I paying for, and what is, either buyer or the seller paying for? So that was really good info.
Well, and I think also because every state is different. So when we're working with buyers that are not familiar with purchasing in Washington, Washington seems to be a little different, where there's other states that have, we're special. Unique is my favorite word.
Okay.
So in other states, buyers and sellers actually sit at the same closing table and sign their closing documents together. And that is typically never done in Washington. In here, what we do is once we've received the loan documents from the buyer's lender and we're ready to sign, we'll schedule the buyer to sign. And that typically is scheduled for about an hour. And I have an example of a set of documents here, because I think a lot of buyers hear these terrible stories about how long the signing took and how awful it was to go through the signing. And I think it's important to know that although this is the stack of documents that they're probably going to sign, it's, 100, 125 pages. As escrow, we just go through those. We put them in a particular order to make it the most important stuff that's very specific to the terms of their loan. A lot of the forms are lender disclosure documents that they've already gone through with their lender, or pretty common forms where a lot of the forms aren't actually loan specific. And so we like to put the ones that talk about interest rate, what is your agreement to repay the loan, all that sort of stuff up front, so we can get that out of the way. I would say, even though we schedule a buyer for an hour, a typical signing is about 30 minutes.
Really?
And buyers are typically pleasantly surprised when the signing's done. That table is empty of all those unsigned documents, and we have a huge stack of signed documents. They usually say, well, that was a lot less painful than I thought it would be.
I bet that's
it looks painful when you show an inch stack of paper.
Yeah, you want to show that stack again?
Yes. There's a lot here.
Yes, there is, but it doesn't take that long, and it's not that hard.
It doesn't. And almost the first thing that's always gone over is that HUD-1 settlement statement, because it really details all the closing costs that we just talked about. And
that's
so
good stuff. Yes.
That one really outlines what's kind of the meat of the transaction. It's all labeled there on those couple pages.
Yeah,
and that's
I've got
good to say,
got a HUD-1 statement up here that has a bunch of annotations on it that you sent us that makes it looks not so bad.
No, that was
this one. The color-coded HUD is really neat because it breaks up each of the sections. So when we were talking about closing costs, I essentially just started in my mind on page 2 of that settlement statement and went down each section, because that's how I explain it. I just start on page 2 and explain all the costs. Then by the time we get to page 1, it kind of, we've already gone through the majority of the cost, and it helps make page 1 more easier to understand.
Nicely, yes, that exactly. And
nice.
You're used to doing this daily because you help thousands of people, I'm sure,
right,
get into their dream home. So when they finish this and you've closed escrow and they want the key, tell us what timelines happen here. When do they get to move in after they sign that last?
The important to move in.
But that last heap of paper.
I would say if I had 10 buyer signings, at least 8 of them will ask escrow when they can get the keys.
Yeah, give it to
and
me
how
now.
they get the keys. Yeah. Even though we handle the funds and we handle the document side of it, we actually have nothing to do with the keys. I always refer the agents to their real estate broker for the delivery of the keys.
Vanna White here.
We get that fun.
Yes. And you know, you do a lot of work there. You should come with us as we do that.
There we go. There we go. No, I'll get stuck helping them move. No. I know how that works. And then as far as possession, we go back to the purchase and sale agreement. That's another one of those terms that are clearly stated there on the purchase and sale agreement, as far as is possession upon closing. And within the contract, it states, I don't recall right off the top of my head, I'm getting a time that possession, that the buyer can have possession of the property. So I always refer the buyers to their real estate brokers to be able to talk about possession and how they get their keys.
Excellent.
Yes, and pay attention to that document that you're signing and what time you get to move in.
So do you think that Joey and Chandler would now understand escrow if they watch this show?
If they watch this show, I'm very proud to say Joey and Chandler would know everything there is to know about escrow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Michelle, this has been a wonderful experience. You did a great job.
Yes,
a lot of good
thank you.
information.
She'll be back. She's going to talk about more.
Please come back in the future.
Yes. Thank you,
All right.
Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Wait a minute,
much.
hold on.
Oh.
Before you leave, tell everybody, because they could request you. Tell us where everybody can find you.
My email is Michelle K at rainiertitle.com, and my cell phone is 425-583-4260.
Okay.
There you
and
go.
we also have a phone there that's 253-256-5730.
That is my office line, yes.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Good.
So everybody call Michelle today.
Yeah. Get all kinds of calls. All right, Michelle.
Okay.
Hey, thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me be here today. It was fun.
It was.
It was.
All
It
right.
was a
Bye-bye.
lot.
Bye-bye.
So that, hopefully, you understand more about escrow, and that it's not painful or scary. It actually gets you within 30 minutes and a signed pack of paper. You get the key to your dream home.
Yeah, it's just that easy, isn't it?
It's just that easy.
All right. Well, you've been watching Buying Your Dream Home Today on the i4Homes TV network.
Yes. Thank you again for joining us.
Yes. Thank you for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Yes.